Hello and welcome to another episode of The Many Parallels. We're your hosts, Trevor and Zach, and today we are joined again with the lovely Zach Sajkowski. Go intro. All right, so I got a few questions for you on how we ended the last one.
Shoot.
So you talked a fair bit about how, there's differences between democratic socialism and communism. So could you define them both for me and how they differ?
I can definitely do my best. It's been quite a while since I've done my studies in college, but I mean, just kind of touching the basics of both. Like, communism is going to be, you're giving all the power to the state, and the state has full control over whatever it is that they decide to do with it. So that's where you see examples like, obviously the big three, like Russia, China, North Korea. Democratic socialism, a lot of people end up thinking that socialism is communism, but that's not the case. Especially in the democratic form. So the difference is, and touching back in kind of my beliefs and where I'm at ideology-wise from last time, is that I am definitely a far left progressive or democratic socialist. I believe in that system. Where democratic socialism is different compared to communism is the people in which who are living underneath that government. They have a say still in what is going on in the country, what the the assets are being used for, whether that be material or monetary, and it's going to be a system that's set up very much like a basic democracy, except more is being given and ran through a government that is which holding that system together.
Opposed to basically like businesses or whatever.
Well, I mean, right now in the United States of America, that got like that for a reason, and it was allowed to become that way.
Oh yeah.
Like, the United States has always been, really into the idea of capitalism, And what we are facing now, I forget what stage they actually call it, but I'm just going to call it like, it's the later stage of capitalism. It's where capitalism has run rampant. Like the ideas of like the main ideas of capitalism, opportunity, and the more that you do, the more that you should gain, and all these
climbing
ideas.
the ladder of success.
Right.
Financial.
They were allowed to go so far that now, how much opportunity are we really seeing? I mean, again,
Mm-hmm.
in the United States of America, anyone can do pretty much anything when it comes to opportunity. You still, we are the land of the free, and you still have opportunity to do that, but the access to climb that ladder is almost near existent for most people nowadays.
And it kind of
Wait, it's near existent?
Or
almost non-existent.
near non-existent.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just want to be
I feel you.
Near non-existent nowadays, where people, yes, that access is still there, but it's almost impossible to break through that wall and actually get in that conversation with a majority of these companies who are running the show.
Right.
nowadays.
That's what I
And
was gonna say. It's like gate kept a little bit
right,
by
and
these giant corporations or.
where all this started is, you can really pinpoint, again, going back to some of my background, like I did graduate with a bachelor's of economics, and then I have a minor in political science, a couple courses away from getting that double bachelor. And you can trace a lot of these things back, looking at the statistics of it all, to the Reagan era. You know, like that's why I don't know if you guys know much about Reaganomics or whatnot.
I don't. I just know fuck Ronald Reagan because he enacted the what the fuck is it? The
I mean,
ban full auto guns. I like firearms, so
So one of the main ideologies of Reaganomics is, you might know it more as trickle down economics.
yeah.
You
Heard
give
that term
more.
a lot.
You give more to the top, and it's going to trickle down to the bottom and disperse to everybody.
it sounds good.
It sounds good, but that never happens.
It doesn't play out
It
that
doesn't
way.
play out like that.
Yeah.
People, you know, that's where, you know, these major tax breaks started to be given, and, you know, policies and whatnot are being put in place to keep more at the top for this idea that, oh, well, the people at the top are going to distribute it to the workers at the bottom.
Right.
A typical capitalistic system, right? But as the years go on and as the decades pass, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. You know,
Right.
nothing in politics in a democratic system. Again, I try to never say never, but rarely often do things streamline. These things take years upon years to go through, and a lot of these changes you don't feel right away. You feel them years after the fact. Like, you know, you see it all throughout, even, you know, like the whole 4-year presidential term bullshit. Like, the economy is so much better now. Like, half the time, if you only have one term as a president,
You spend that whole time dealing with the last
dealing
guy's
with the last
bullshit.
person's fucking shit.
Yeah.
And, you
That's
know,
facts.
if nowadays in this fucking rigmarole, locked up Congress, if you can actually get through any of the shit that you're trying to implement,
Right.
nowadays it's you know, again, the country is not feeling that until almost 3-4 years later.
So the way that I see it, though, wouldn't giving more power to them in form of democratic socialism, they have more votes to count, all that kind of shit, wouldn't that muddy that process even further?
So where democratic socialism comes into play, and again, when you're talking in regards to the United States of America, we're fucking so landlocked throughout all of it right now anyway, that, again, kind of what we touched on the first podcast, is there would have to be multiple of areas being hit all at the same time. Like, you can't change one thing and expect everything to change overnight, or even expect anything to change at all. You need to go through multiple different systems all at once and really say, hey, if we're going to give something like this a go, we need to give it a go. So where democratic socialism comes into place is, yes, again, you know, one of the things that people oftentimes have the most issue with is high taxes, right? They want to feel like they're working for something, and nowadays people feel like they're already working for so little. But some of the things that, you know, in my mind, that would get enacted with a system like democratic socialism is, yes, okay, sure, the people as a whole might be taxed upwards to 35%, 40%. Businesses are going to feel that even more so. Big business, big corporations, not allowing them to hide in tax shelters, you know, like tax havens. Like, can't really think of a few off the top of my head, but remote places, you know what I mean? Places where money can't be touched in these accounts. Offshore business, what have you.
Well, you know, so if you're the owner of a company, sure, you get tax breaks on your company, but you don't get tax breaks as an individual. So you're paying taxes more with a company, but a company also, first off, it generates money. So there's people who can get paid, you know, their wages and whatever to work. It provides goods to the general community and gets, you know, money flowing more.
It's helping the economy. And
Yeah,
shit.
exactly. So,
I feel you.
like,
in a lot of ways, again, all this is true, but where's the benefit if you're an American citizen letting these companies outsource this business to China, for example.
Well, I agree. We shouldn't be outsourced. I think that there needs to be lockdowns on that kind of shit, and American, fucking industry and all that. But then there's things like, for instance, Joe Biden enacted an act which, yeah, I'd say the first 2 years or so of a presidency.
Joe Biden didn't do shit. He doesn't even know where he's at right now.
He doesn't. I agree.
Right.
But
it's all just like a show.
whatever, whoever is behind the shit, spearheaded by him,
the round table.
Cut off American drilling and shit and getting oil. So now it's like, oh, we can't do it here because fossil fuels are a problem, but we can get it from other countries. That's stupid. It's like, if we're going to use shit, let it be American.
Right. Well, for me, that's a bad example because I'm also like a nature head, and I really feel like, there's obviously lots of evidence out there that, like, if we keep doing what we're doing on this planet, we are on our way out for sure. So, like, building, like, pipelines and shit, like, I mean, this even hits close to home. I don't know if it's in the process still or if it got approved and it's done. I don't think it's done because I feel like it'd be a lot bigger deal. But as far as I know, like, they're trying to, last I heard, build one of those fucking mega pipelines through Lake Michigan. So as you know, or if you don't know, we're blessed to be able to fucking grow up here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Like,
it's literally called the good land. Like, that's what Milwaukee means.
Yeah, but
bro.
we're sitting on one of the biggest freshwater
reserves
in the world, not even just this country, in the literal world.
I always told people, like, coming up, like, if something like a catastrophe happened, basically this is where everybody would want to come because we have all this damn water.
All this good shit, very few natural disasters. Now think about it.
Yeah.
You build that pipeline through, and you hear about them all the fucking time, dude. You build that pipeline in the fucking bottom of Lake Michigan. That shit bursts. I mean, Lake Michigan is not, it's fresh water, but it ain't very clean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clean in some areas of it, some shores.
Not to mention, I mean, we don't really individually know, I don't think, but, like, what is the upkeep? What is the maintenance of these things? Like, what...
So we need,
what is the cost? What is
oil and shit for cars, and we need to get to something better. Electric vehicles, people argue, but they have their own shit for, like, the batteries and all that. They have their own downsides.
Well, how do you make electricity most of the time?
Yeah.
Unless that electricity is also sustainable. Most
so
people
that's what I was getting
burn
to.
Coal
in terms of getting to the point of, so cars is what I think we really need oil for. But for overall electricity, we should switch to nuclear. People are all scared because of the whole Chernobyl shit, but if you look into these events, it was a lot of mishandling and shit. Nuclear power is the cleanest energy we have and the most abundant energy you can get to. And there's a lot of fail-safes and other things put into place now, especially after catastrophes like Chernobyl. I think people look more into that.
Just happened not that long ago.
Yeah, Fukushima.
5 years or whatever, 6 years.
Also, if you look into it, a lot of incompetence and all that along the way, which in America there's a lot more regulations to keep all these things in check. And even still after Fukushima, Japan's one of the... pretty sure they have, like, the most nuclear power plants in the world. Don't quote me on that. Might be France or some shit, or Spain, one of those countries. But because there is a benefit to it, the amount of power you get per plant, it's way cleaner. People have this misconception of nuclear waste as well, that it's like super contaminated. But it's they put it in these fucking containers and it decays and then it's done. It doesn't go into the atmosphere. It doesn't get into water or anything.
Oh, well, I mean, again, I'm not opposed to nuclear energy at all.
I know I'm saying that for people who might be.
Yeah, like nuclear energy is a good way, but it should be definitely multifaceted. I mean, I actually took a pretty in-depth course on this called Energy in Science and Nature. And there's tons of ways to make sustainable energy.
That's what I think. Like that.
Maybe a combination.
The big wigs, the people at the round table, the whoever the fuck, like they probably understand what you just said, but like there's incentive to not enact that, to not put those things into place,
Well,
to make more money, to
yeah.
make more people suffer.
Well, solar and wind, for instance, are not as
everything.
reliable. But I also heard like the materials to make such things are scarce to come by, and that's where it becomes a problem too. Where it's like we're just choosing which fucking material, but in terms of reliability, that's where fossil fuels are the most reliable and abundant, and that's why
Yeah,
it's
it's interesting.
more ideal.
And yeah, you know, to be able to make solar panels, there is, I forget what exactly they mine.
Is
to
it
be able to-
cobalt or is that for the batteries?
That might, it's still.
Because I know
might
they
be
use that
cobalt.
for the batteries and fucking electric
It might be
cars.
cobalt, honestly, but I can't confirm that. But you know, I mean, again, like when you're looking at a global, like the global view of it all, it's tough. You know what I mean? Because like again,
Like, how do you help as many people as you can?
well, not only that, but like you start actually looking into the morality of how are these things being mined?
Yeah.
What is their work situation like?
Right.
I mean, it's probably no better than fucking factories in China.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
and those are human lives, and human lives are important, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, like, you know, are these people, the people that are, you know, mining this shit, what are their working conditions? What are their
In a
health
lot of
conditions
cases, I
like?
heard
Usually pretty shitty.
Yeah, it's like children or slaves, even like
Sucks.
not even paid.
Okay,
type
now
shit.
let's just-
sure you get a cent an hour at a sweatshop, but
Let's pretend. Okay. What if we fix that though?
And that's what I'm saying is like if we could find a way, you know, without being fucking global police still, because that's a whole different issue.
yeah.
To make sure that the things that we can feel good about the products that we are using and the materials that we are getting
Right.
to be able to make all of this possible. I mean, I feel like
I think about that a lot. Yeah, like the total disconnect from like our food to the stuff we wear to
Everything.
and everything. We don't know where anything comes from, and we're just like daydreaming through life, like, you know, accepting. Well, it's because that's what our options kind of are that are presented to us. So then,
So
that's
then,
what it is.
to bring this back to about socialism and shit, I feel like the best way for us to find alternatives is under a free market system, freer than we currently are, because then people are looking for alternatives that are more renewable, because then they don't have to spend as much money on shit that are easier to fucking get and better for the environment, because
way that
environmentalists will always
but
be
how
talking
all
shit.
free market systems work is that's all fine and dandy until a top dog comes into the market
And
there's ways-
gobbles it all up.
and
bro.
gobbles it all
Yeah.
up, and then eventually, again, like there's a systematic way to do this, and I'll kind of outline this to, in like the sense of, like, streaming, right? It's a very broad point of view here, a broad example, but it kind of ties into some of like the same systematic way that
Yeah.
it happens on a bigger scale. Look at what happened with streaming services, right?
It used to be.
You come into the free market, right? And you start, you know, you have a product that sells. It's great. I mean, who doesn't love streaming services? You got Netflix, you got Hulu, you got Disney Plus now, you got fucking Peacock, you got all these different streaming services.
Yeah.
All the major fucking corporations have their own streaming services, ESPN, Discovery, whatever the fuck. And you come in to this free market system, and you know that you have a product that sells, and you know it's a good idea. So what are you going to do? You're going to come in at a price, and you're going to undercut everybody. Everybody meaning the major cable services right now. Come in, you undercut everybody for years and years and years, and you get everybody used to this new system. You get everybody okay with this change, and you phase out. I mean, like I said, I don't know a single young person now that has cable television. I really don't. Like,
Why would you? That's why
exactly. Why would you? So now that is like that. Now that the system is kind of already been molded, what are the streaming services doing now?
Well, obviously they're raising the prices, but you
why?
want to get back to because more people are buying it.
There's a
because
demand for that.
Yeah, there's higher demand, supply and demand, simple economics.
And I understand simple economics, if anything, but
yeah, obviously.
But why? They never needed to. But now all of a sudden that's the case.
Because there's a higher demand. There wasn't a demand before. Just for instance, okay, first off, they couldn't even come into play if not for the free market, you know.
Why?
What? Well, they couldn't have come into play if not for the free market. And hey, I've got this idea. I think this would be better than cable because cable sucks ass.
It's optimization.
Yeah,
essentially.
And then people saw, hey, this is doing well. Let's make our own competition. So then each streaming service has to try to make better content and incentivize you to buy theirs. So it needs to be cheaper than the other thing, but now it's become a necessity. And so, like cable companies, they end up raising their rates more. But
it's like a trade-off. Like, I don't know, convenience. Like, that's the whole streaming appeal. You can watch whatever, whenever, however long or much of it you want and all that. Go back to whatever part. I mean, some of that stuff was available with, like, certain features if you had the right program.
But you had to hope the right episode came on to record, or, I mean, I guess there was direct demand or whatever.
That type of shit, but, yeah. But, you know, like, I know what you're saying. Like, it all comes from, like, what was before it. Like, the events, the things that were put into place that led up to that. And I understand. You agree with that,
yeah, well,
right?
that's just, like, the evolution of things.
It has to be
but
that
I feel
way,
like it couldn't have happened without there being a free market if things were more set in stone.
But then
socialism, for
jump
example,
forward.
Wouldn't completely destroy a free market. That's the point of it all, is like there would still be competition. There would still be, you know, we kind of talked about this also last time, like people want to make advancements, people want to work, people naturally, you know, they're always, we live in a world now where it's just our nature to try to take what we know and do it better. So that example of the streaming services was just kind of an example of how systematically these things kind of work and how it can kind of be looked at a smaller scale to understand how it could operate on a bigger scale. Because again, like, you know, now they're raising their prices after they've phased out a whole their main competition, which was cable services. The same can be said for anything on a grander scale.
Yeah.
And this comes, you know, into like the major problems that are actually really problematic within our country: childcare, healthcare, education,
all
of
the
these
things
things
the common man can't afford anymore.
Exactly. So that's where it kind of comes into play, where it's just like all of these things, you know, it's like we're being forced to operate in this way, in this system. But what created the system to be so bogged down and locked in place as such? That expensive free market system, the fact that there is no checks and balances anywhere along the way for places to be held up and be like, whoa, you're getting a little bit too big. You almost have too much control over this market, whatever market you may be talking about within that free market
monopolies
system.
are illegal. There's always competition.
See,
but
that's the thing.
if somebody does,
but who has the most influence over the market? Is it just two companies and shit that are all talking to each other?
So you could say there's like pseudo monopolies, but nothing is stopping you from making your own fucking Amazon,
your own version
doing
of
it
whatever they're
better,
doing,
and trying to provide something that makes it superior. It's going to be fucking difficult.
Okay, argument.
But you can.
The Coca-Cola being worth $250 billion, isn't that going to put them a little bit, like, ahead of the common man?
You have more bargaining chips at the table.
Yeah.
Guarantee.
Like, you can do so much for
but there's still Pepsi.
billion.
There's still fucking hell. Even RC Cola. There's other cola companies.
There's technically competitors.
I can't confirm or deny this right now because I don't have the list in front of me, but almost every fucking product that comes across our, you know, that's on the shelves or comes across our table is like owned, I think it's like 5 major corporations
type shit, right?
Like everything. Like there is no, you know, it's a very interesting graph because like there, in a lot of free markets, it's really not even competition. It's all a ploy set up to act and seem
That's
like
what I'm
there's
saying.
competition,
Like,
but really
they act as
they
one
own-
company
yeah.
anyway. Like, damn
like,
near.
cereal brands, for example. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I think only like one major company or like maybe two actually have the actual
Yeah,
their
General
hands-
Mills and Kellogg.
Yeah, that
Oh,
deal
okay.
with like cereal brands.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, there's all this competition, Lucky Charms, Tricks, fucking this, fucking that.
But that's like how Pepsi and
But
Coke
really,
is.
it's
But
all
at least
going
there's
streamlined to the same top dog.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
That one company owns all that shit. So,
well, it's a smart thing in business to diversify and be in more markets if possible.
and I'm not disagreeing with that at all, but where the point is, the point that I'm trying to make is with, a system that is so locked in later stage capitalism, those opportunities, like I was saying, that access to that ladder is so much more difficult, which, again, I'm not necessarily trying to dismantle or, saying that we should dismantle it in full, but there has to be then other things set in place to change the way that we're doing it a little bit, and that's one of the areas that socialist, democratic socialism can aid. For example, like you said Amazon. That's a good example. That man, Amazon is the first $1 trillion company. Again, I read this a couple years ago, so maybe they haven't hit it yet. Again, I can't fact check myself at this current moment, but if they're not yet, they're fucking close, like very close. The first $1 trillion company. And Amazon themselves, they pay very little in U.S. taxes compared to what they make. Yeah, sure, Jeff Bezos pays some amount in taxes. I would argue still not enough compared to what he's making. But the company as a whole pay very little U.S. taxes.
Yeah.
So again, we're talking about things that could actually really change people's lives and make, the bar of living much, much higher for the common person in America. These are the types of things that we're talking about. Like, I forget what the number is, but like X amount of dollars for, free education in this country for anyone who wants it. That's plausible, very plausible.
But look at how public schools are run, for instance. It's like, I don't know, when the government is in charge of shit, it's almost always subpar.
Yeah.
For instance, like...
institutions are corrupted often. Like,
yeah,
almost
USPS, for the longest time, it was, you'll get your mail whenever the fuck you get it, if you get it. There's no tracking number. There's no overnight shipping until, like, FedEx came along. And then there was UPS and now, obviously,
Right.
Amazon
Yeah.
and all that shit. Like, competition is healthy because if there's only one thing, well, it's going to stagnate because they're going to get comfortable, which is the problem with monopolies. But that's why, with a free market, if that starts happening with an Amazon, the next motherfucker's going to step up and take that place.
But a lot of the ways that like democratic socialism operates, again, is not completely wiping out a free market. And that's one of the ways that it differs from communism the most, is communism is the government coming in and
seizing the means of production.
It's
means of production
basically
and
like-
using certain means of production to then dictate who gets what. Where
Yeah.
democratic socialism is we, the people, still are getting a vote and a choice on what the system even looks like, how it's set up.
Okay, with that choice, is that equivalent to final say?
Meaning what?
Like, they can give their input, but are the small group of people, aka the government, still gonna make the final decision, even if it's not what the people wished?
Well,
Like,
and
is that a possibility?
That's the fucking funny thing about politics. I mean, one could say that that's always a possibility.
Right.
I mean, we're dealing with human nature here. And
Yeah.
some people are just,
They're
nurtured into being,
deceptive.
evil. Yeah, deceptive,
and,
evil.
yeah.
Bring evil energy into the world. And that might be for one reason or another, not that it, I believe that you can be evil without necessarily being physically harmful to people.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
There's tons of ways to be.
It's really about your intent or
your intent. So
your
even
will.
the intent of like, oh well, I want to make my company the most money as humanly possible, and I want to make myself as much money as humanly possible, and see where this goes.
It comes from greed, like.
How are you doing it though? And that's
Right.
again where we're getting into like the factories in China, for example. Like,
Right.
they're paying these people fucking cents on the fucking dollar compared to what
So
it would
if-
be in a U.S. economy.
If they were to make some sort of embargo where it's like your products must be manufactured in the U.S.,
You can't use slave labor.
yeah, you can't outsource it to
Type
countries
shit.
who, will have certain violations of human rights. Maybe we could outsource it to the UK or France or some shit, but we
And
couldn't do
this-
it. Would that be a more viable solution to you? And then we wouldn't have to implement such drastic taxation, all that stuff.
Well, make no mistake though, the moment that we do something like that, we're already dealing with an inflated global economy, right? So like prices are going to go up again naturally right away as soon as you do something like that. But it's all about when you're talking business, and especially in a capitalistic system, especially in later stage capitalism, where in the United States of America, companies have been allowed since Citizens United, the major Supreme Court case that really allowed them to continue to do this. They can just dump as much money into our political system because they classify that businesses as a person. That shouldn't be allowed. Like,
Yeah, it's because like a corporation is essentially a corpse, bro. Like a corporation. So anytime you like get that LLC, it's all capitals. That's why your birth certificate is all capitals, because you become a corporation yourself to the government, like when you're born.
So can you
You're
dive
a
deeper into this
corpse.
case, because I'm not familiar with it and I'm a little just curious.
Very interesting.
so, after, like I said, you can stem through tons of statistical information about how things really, really changed with Reaganomics or trickle-down economics and all the other types of policies that he tried to enact in the United States of America at the time. And it took decades for things to slowly but surely get tighter and tighter and tighter, into which Citizens United, I believe, was, I was going to Google this real quick, it's 2000 something.
So it was more recent and not during Reaganomics, essentially. But was Reaganomics a catalyst for it, if you will?
That's what started it all. That's where a lot of...
But I know that Nixon era, some shit happened where, like, they accused him of allowing us to outsource business to China and shit like that, like labor to
Who?
China. Nixon. Which is, I think, like 15, 20 years before Reagan. So, like, it's all like the same thing. Like, groundwork has to be laid before to allow the next dude to make some decisions that open up the floodgates for this shit to happen. And then, like, people are blaming the wrong thing most of the time and shit. Or, like, I don't know if you can even truly find something to blame, because it's like you can always trace it back to what, like George Washington or whatever the fuck. Like,
So it was in the early 2000s, really, that like people started to even feel a lot of the major repercussions of what Reagan started. And that's where, lobbying in the United States at this point was becoming, in my opinion, rampant. It was running rampant. And Citizens United was argued March 24th of 2029,
damn.
re-argued September 9th of 2029, and finally decided January 21st of 2010. And what that case, TLDR, too long didn't read, explanation of what that case did is that's the case that the Supreme Court verified and laid down the precedent that said, hey, corporations are technically a it can be seen as a sole entity.
An entity, yeah.
And because of that, they can dump as much money into our political system as they want. Now, this is one of the major ways you can see where that could be a problem. A simple Joe like me or you, how much money do we really have to put into our political system? Barely anything at all, because people are struggling to live in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But a company like, like you said, Amazon or Coca-Cola or, big oil, they have tons of money to dump into our political system and lobby our politicians to influence them to make decisions that the people don't necessarily agree with. I mean, again, like overturning Roe versus Wade, for example. A majority of people don't agree with that in the United States of America, but yet it still happened.
I'm pretty sure we talked about that last time, but I feel like that's a better thing, because then it gives more power back to the states, as it should be, because we're supposed to be, the United States set up in a sense of we're individual actors inside of a grand unifying thing. Each state, though, should be more autonomous than they currently are.
And again, that's kind of where, your ideology even stems into almost, like I said, we've discussed this before, you run a lot of even libertarian views, which is, a lot of libertarian views is the least amount of government it's humanly possible. Again, there's pros and cons to almost any system that you put in place. Some have more pros, some have more cons. Now, when you're talking a system of like communism, one could say, obviously there's a lot more cons, but there are, if you look at it from a different scope, pros to communism. Now, the way that a lot of these governments are ran, or how they choose to run them, that's where a lot of the cons come into play. Now, again, when you're speaking about something like democratic socialism, it's not, this fear of wiping a free market. It's giving more opportunity for smaller players
to climb the ladder.
To climb that ladder, to have access to that ladder. And obviously, going along with that, a lot of the policies that something like that type of system would bring change just how this country would operate. Again, higher taxation means that we can, potentially provide a healthcare system that is not so insane, or, provide higher education to the masses, especially the less privileged people in this country. Like I said, a lot of people, and I don't think that you need to go and get a higher education to be successful in any way, shape, or form, but people do enjoy learning. Like, some people don't want to learn in a classroom setting. That's okay. But just the fact that the accessibility to such is almost, again, feels near impossible to so many people in this country, which in turn is trickling down into the way that people just naturally act, respond, behave with their lives. That's where you kind of run into, an even bigger log jam down the road than what we're currently experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we live in a world where the internet, you can find almost anything out if you know how to decipher through the bullshit on it.
See, but I feel like if college was free, there'd be even more jobs that wouldn't let you fucking, it's like, oh, you literally could just go to college for free, you don't have this education, we're not going to hire you. It'd be even more
You're less
picky
qualified.
If you're someone like me, I do not work in a school.
That whole need a degree thing is something that I don't agree with at all.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like that would get even worse if college was free.
I disagree, because then it would actually go back to more of the merits on how they feel about you as a person, your general energy, your vibe,
Like,
what you work for.
it's basically like It's the same
credentials.
as nobody having a degree, essentially. If
Well, I
everybody
disagree.
has one.
Exactly, but not everybody will have one because there's some people like, okay, I don't learn in the classroom, but if you apply for a job and you have a high school diploma, compared to somebody who don't, even if that person who doesn't is, you know, you look at their IQ or whatever, and they're genuinely smarter than somebody who did, that piece of paper still gets them more, and that's a
Alright,
required one, or like free essentially. So if college became that, I feel like that would just become an even more toxic environment where you have to have that piece of paper.
I disagree with that statement because, again, like at the end of the day, people, and not even just speaking of degrees, but even making more certifications
Yeah.
accessible, like any
Yeah.
type of higher learning that you choose
See,
to
that's
do,
what I
whether
always
that's actually
hated,
like a
like-
classroom setting and getting
Yeah.
a piece of paper, or doing a more, localized, focused certificate.
So we could
And-
do something like that now
Yeah.
without having to reform the way our government functions in implementing more certifications, qualifications that aren't as expensive and all that shit.
Yeah.
We could easily make alternatives to college. People just need to
Essentially-
have the ideas and the willpower to do such.
Yeah,
And the
like
money, though.
somebody has to allocate the resources and have
And
the
the
will
money.
to do all that.
I
like
mean,
to do that.
You don't need a crazy amount of money to do something like that. Learn the
make, like, a
code, make some
program
shit
and-
online, then you go and find the proper channels to get it approved essentially to be official. Wouldn't cost
I mean,
crazy
I
money
don't
other
doubt
than to
that-
maintain the
that-
domain.
This type of stuff is happening. It's just probably on a very small, it's not nationwide or
Well,
like in a huge.
that's how it starts, though.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with the recent happenings of the school, like the way schools have been performing, I think there's an increasing number of people that don't want to have their kid go through the indoctrination camps of schools anymore. Like they want to provide some alternate way, whether it's homeschooling or something else, but I don't know if there's too many alternate ways yet. Like probably a lot of online courses.
But also,
and shit like that.
like, again though, like you gotta remember that one of the main things that a higher education does do for you is not necessarily, like I said, I went through all my 2 years of fucking general education courses, again, high school 2.0, did all of it, and I'm not, fucking taking the fucking geometry that I
Yeah.
relearned or learned at a slightly higher level in college with me every single day and using it as part of my
Right.
life. But what school or any type of higher education, again, no matter what you call it, classroom setting, not classroom setting, whatever, what it does for people is it teaches you a way to problem solve, think, and just behave in a certain
Right.
way.
I
It's
agree.
giving you more tools to think more logically about situations, be able to break down problems or situations. And again, we're living in a country right now where it seems like no matter what side that you're fucking on the political spectrum, most people are getting their news and what they think or what they feel that they know as knowledge is from just like one fucking
Echo
Yeah.
chamber.
one sentence headlines.
Oh,
Whatever's
headlines
whatever's
too, yeah.
fed
One-
to them. Yeah.
like where like when you're giving a whole civilization of people, so like a whole group of people, so call it United States American citizens, and you're giving them the opportunity to learn at a higher level and giving them more opportunity. You're teaching a group of people how to think more rationally, see things for how they are, wade through the bullshit, giving them more tools to do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason why schools get unfunded, or they fucking like the war on education that seemingly happens in this country, is because when you're dealing with a stupid population, it's easier to enact the more devious
That's what
or
I was gonna point out.
wrong
yeah.
intended types of policies that are ultimately going to log up and traffic jam the top, like we're seeing in this country.
Yeah, if anything, I'd argue that it's partial to blame the public school system, how that's handled
Yeah,
and shit, which,
it's
again,
like
government institution, it's,
nobody cares about like what's going on, and that's why they just take it at face value, like you mentioned, and stuff like that, because that somehow is how we're being spit out as young people. Like, you can recall being in school and stuff, and it's just like no one really is interested in school. Like, no one is looking for the value that you just described
yeah,
in
one,
higher education, but just in basic education that we are granted a right to. Like, no one's looking for the deeper meaning or what the value
Yeah.
of what's going on.
yeah, one thing that you kind of alluded to, I guess, was, it gives you more ways to view and logically think about things, and I feel like that's
Right.
what school should do instead of just kind of, hey, mitochondria's powerhouse to cell, teach you
Yeah.
different ways to kind of think, but also use Socratic method and question these. Um,
Like, there is
But when you're-
value in the system, but
Right,
there
but
could be so much more.
When you're talking about, basic education, at least, up to K-12, right, through the end of high school, it's, in my opinion, very beneficial to cover all of these things, because how do you know, like, you're giving people the opportunity to test and try out what calls to them. Like you just said, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Most of us laugh at that because it's funny, and like it's been jammed down our throat year after year, right?
Yeah.
While you're growing up. The kids that are like 6, 5, 7, I don't know when the fuck you first hear about that, maybe 10, I don't fucking know
no
at
idea.
this point, but whatever age it might be, maybe that piece of information, they're like, what?
Right.
The
That's-
mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell?
That's
And
what
then
I'm
that's
saying.
what gets them to all of a sudden want to fucking live a life in science.
It's like
and
magic. It
creating
really
so
is.
fucking medicines fucking 20
I,
years later, and
yeah.
they're going to save lives, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Oh,
I remember
yeah.
watching a video by Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's talked about how school reform should be, and it should be something like that, where it's like when you're younger, present you with some different ideas, and whatever kids kind of gravitate towards as you get older, more of the classes should sort of be elective and to feed these curiosities.
Yeah, like,
but it's
it'd
difficult
almost
to
be
get
like,
that.
It'd almost be like, you know how some kids might spend a little more extra time in the art wing or the art department
Yeah.
or whatever. They take those classes extra. It should be like those kids damn near never leave that shit. Like, they don't have to go take autos class, and they don't have to go take whatever other class. Like, they kind of more
Yeah.
so get that focus. They still get maybe their core elements of
But the
learning
one thing
and stuff,
too is with
but it should be more like curated, focused, expansive type of programs and stuff like that.
well,
That'd
that's
be really
one benefit
crazy.
of homeschooling though too, is because say we are both interested in history.
Mhm.
The aspects of history I like aren't the same as you, and they can't really individually focus on each kid because there's so many. So that's where it's like difficult.
You
and-
can't you can't cater to everybody.
Yeah.
Agreed. But that's where like sometimes they send people off to universities or colleges or whatever to take courses when they've already done everything at the high school and stuff.
Oh,
like
right.
Yeah.
because we can't provide you anything else. We'll send you up there to get a head start. Like,
Well, you can, as you said too, especially with modern day, you can figure a lot of that shit out yourself,
yeah,
like in different ways. So the idea of
which is
we
a
need
really
school,
crazy thing.
or we need higher education and it needs to be paid for. I don't know. It's easy to learn things as long as you have the will and the motivation.
Yeah,
If you don't
like,
have that, well then you're not going to do anything with the fucking information anyways.
the university or like college experience is like, it's just very curated for you, you know? It's
Yeah.
very like I know there's
And if
still
you want that, then
work
that's
and a lot
beneficial.
of bullshit that goes
Get
into
to it.
Yeah,
But I don't think
Yeah.
it's mandatory by any means,
right.
especially mandatory enough for us to
Depends what you want to
Pay
do.
more
I
shit.
mean,
But in a system like we have currently, where you had outlined earlier that like having that piece of paper all of a sudden does make the
Legitimize
difference,
you. Yeah.
then it should, in my opinion, that's especially when it should be more accessible to people
Mm.
And
to
that's
have
why,
that choice.
and I think we even probably talked about this last time, and that's why I think we should change that conception of, oh, you need a degree or whatever in the workplace and such, and that there should be other qualifiers to
There should
show that shit, especially with how accessible things are nowadays.
Yeah.
And I think that's a much easier change to implement than to, again, restructure our entire governmental body.
But again, though, people want to learn. A lot of people do like the classroom setting, me being included. Like,
Well,
if I
yeah,
didn't
and
have
if-
to work to live, I would fucking take, like, I'd be in college almost all the time, learning something new, just because it fucking intrigues me, or
Yeah,
I'm
and-
interested in it, or I want to better myself in some way.
But that's a privilege that, hey, I want this more curated thing. You're paying for the place's time, the people, the fucking teachers and all that. So you're paying for that privilege instead of having to figure it all out yourself, which is a bit more work. But again, it's like
if
you're paying for that convenience.
If you need the piece of paper to get the good paying job, though.
Well, let's
Is it
say we
privilege?
remove that, though,
Like-
is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Because you indicated that you'd still want to go to college if we removed that because you like the learning, if you had the opportunity to.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, you're paying for that convenience. That's why it's cheaper to buy a 2-liter than it is to buy, a smaller soda. You're paying for that convenience. Nobody wants to carry around a fucking 2-liter.
Type
Right.
shit.
So,
But
Yeah,
the
it's
convenience of it
interesting.
all shouldn't
Me-
play as much of a role
it's
in
not
that
the-
process.
yeah.
Like, again, it comes down to, for me, again, looking at the bigger picture of it all. Again, there's stats that back this. Like a population that is more educated is more sound. That's just how it goes. And when you don't have an educated population, that's where things are going astray. And you're saying like, well, public schools this, public schools that. Yes, that they are technically governmental bodies, right? Or assisted by the governmental body that we have here in the United States of America, but only to an extent. I mean, like I've just seen like a for me like a ironically funny meme about this, where it's just like, just like laughing at later stage capitalism, like what we in this country are experiencing. Like a lot of the fucking teachers in this world, in this country, I mean, like it was like a fucking like some like game or like some like opportunity, and they were like, they hid like 1,000 or like 5,000 single dollar bills in like a sandbox, and they just had like 6 teachers in front of a crowd digging in the sandbox to collect as many of these single dollars
Right.
as possible to help out their fucking classroom.
Right.
Like,
That is
what,
a weird
dude?
That's a weird thing. I worked with a dude whose both of his parents were teachers, and he's like, they have it rough. Like anything that they want for their classroom, any like whatever, they have to pay for it.
Almost pay for it themselves and shit.
yeah, I remember teachers talking about that when I
But
went to
then
school. Like,
these
I pay for
schools-
this shit myself.
These schools
so
have
take good care of it.
these schools have fucking 30, 40, 50 million dollar annual budgets that presumably comes from what? The taxpayer?
That's if you're talking like higher education systems, which that's like a whole
Bro,
different ballgame. But if
the
we're
high
talking
school
up
in
to,
Cudahy got a $25 million annual budget, which is like insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
So that just begs the question: what are they doing with
what
that?
are they doing with
Right.
it? Because I didn't feel $1 million programs in
Yeah,
that
some of our
motherfucker.
books were like from the 90s still.
No,
type
dude,
shit.
the video production classes, which were my favorite, dude, we had like one good camera that he would let you like use if you were very, very careful. Why don't we have a couple? The rest were like the shitty little home video camcorders type shit. Like, damn, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, they did redo some stuff in there. It was very nice. It was like they renovated things. It's great aesthetically, but like,
Yeah, see,
programs
that's why I
or
think
departments.
opening up schooling,
Yeah.
to
reworking the very old way.
and
it
also
is.
so that you could go to even a public school in a different fucking city, because now how it works now is like you have to be in
A resident,
yeah
or you
of
have
that
to like
city.
apply or something
Apply
like
and then
that.
pay for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because if there's competition between schools, they're gonna spend that tax money better to give you a better education. Because I'm gonna send my kids to the place with better education.
Yeah,
So
I've seen
Why
that
wouldn't
too.
you? Right, that would be more incentive for more localized, you know, education systems to,
Yes.
make the improvements that are either wanted,
Necessary and-
needed.
Yeah.
So, like,
in
it's not a
that
huge
community.
fix to the overall system, but I think school vouchers is a good start to have where, you can go to other fucking schools and whatever the fuck else.
Hey, bro, we got good ideas here.
That ain't my idea. I wish I could
School
take credit for
vouchers
that.
Well,
are an interesting
pretty-
concept
No
that I
ideas
actually
are
studied.
ideas.
I could be mistaken, but if I'm not mistaken, that's so you can go to other school in different districts, some shit along those lines.
Yeah, but it's the government also giving. There's like a benefit to that school for doing so, right? And then the problem that came up with school vouchers is like that school then becomes very
Vouchery.
vouchery and nitpicky on who they're allowing into that school. And like if
Right.
that school is not headed by, sound morals themselves, that's where you'll have an all white school in a black community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And still somehow, getting tax benefit for that when really the people in that community should be able to benefit from that school as well without that system being enacted. It gets really tricky,
Yeah.
Well, if how you have it set up of like, if you're a resident in this, you automatically get free entrance to this one school, but then you can go elsewhere if you want, and that school will get,
I'm not
benefits
disagreeing
for.
with that. I think that you should be able to
Yeah, that
again,
seems pretty
make
fair.
that choice, if that's what you want to do. Send your child to whatever school that you want to send them to, or whatever is going to,
Best suit them.
best suit them and help build themselves up as, growing American citizens, adults, right? Because then, as soon as they turn 18, like, you're then thrown into a world where you now get to make that decision yourself, almost, or at least try to. Then you have, like, the world as your oyster to utilize again, or try to. And that's kind of what I'm saying is, like, that's where all this kind of comes into play for the accessibility of it all. If we open up the access to people who don't necessarily have that access, or it's a lot harder for them to gain that access, we're educating a population, and that in turn is going to do wonders down the road for the civilization, the country.
Like, you don't know
as a whole.
you don't know the changes that like educating all those people could make. Like, that would be.
Could there
I
be a
agree.
real negative to it? You'd have more.
I mean,
Discourse,
unless they got
educated
a
discourse,
they got an
huh?
evil mind, maybe
Yeah, but
a
then
well-educated evil mind.
yeah, but then also the good people would be more
Oh
educated,
shit!
so it would
It'll
be
bring out the good too. Yeah, no, I guess
Exactly.
it's all good.
more discourse.
That's the truest saying ever. It's all good.
Yeah,
'Cause-
I definitely think there too needs to be some sort of cultural change in us all focusing on, as I said, headlines and
All the-
that
yeah.
instant shit.
clickbait bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
for real.
But a lot of that
taking
is
advantage
so
of the human psyche.
ingrained into us now that, you know what I mean? And that a lot of that, in my opinion, has to do with the lack of education throughout the last couple decades.
Well, like critical thinking is like a weird term to people now. Like common sense, critical thought. Like, what are those things? Like, I don't ponder what those are or have a firm understanding of that shit. Like that's my interpretation of most folks. I don't know.
Like, this is like kind of where the world is going in terms of like how I feel the education system is kind of churning and dumping these kids out into the world nowadays. Like, for example, I went to McDonald's like the other week, and I go in. I have a sweet tooth, so I love fucking chocolate chip cookies.
Oh,
And I'm just like, I'm gonna fucking get a couple banging chocolate chip cookies, like some basic but good chocolate chip cookies. Fuck it. I go in there, and this girl's probably like no older than like no older than 17, but I probably put her at like 15 or 16. And, I go in there, no stress about the situation at all in terms of like busyness or commotion going on. It was like me and one other dude in there at the desk who had just made an order. And then I go up and I go, I'd like 6 chocolate chip cookies to go, please. And she's sitting there fumbling on the screen and just hitting it over and over again and just like looking with a confused look on her face. And then after like a minute she goes, the best that I can do for you is get you 2 3-packs. And I go, that's 6.
Your best is great. Like I love your best.
That's
like
what I came here for. Like,
give me that quick. Yeah.
And like,
geez.
and technology and these fucking phones play a big role with that too. Like when we were growing up, especially in elementary and school and whatnot, like we didn't have access to fucking distractions in our pockets at all times. But yeah, like that's it's like a very small example of like how I feel defunding an education system looks like, or what it leads to is like people who have no critical thinking skills, and because again they're not being trained, which is going back is one of, I feel like, the most fundamental things about learning in a setting like that is learning how to operate with the tools that you are given,
like within a system
and giving.
I value that shit too a lot, like, and it's hard because I'm kind of like low-key anarchist, but low-key like value systematic shit as well. So it's like, I don't know, like I believe in both. Like I believe that
contradictory as hell.
Yeah, because like when you institute a little control, it's inevitably going to go all the way into too much control and suffering eventually. It's always going to go that way. Like it's just natural. Like it starts out as one thing and it has to be good to turn bad and go bad to turn good again. So it's just, that's why like I don't believe in the government, but I don't think that total anarchy would work either. But I value systems.
Yeah, I
of
mean,
order.
I don't know if it was one of the founding fathers or like a former president or something. Somebody one point said, I agree with this. All government systems are flawed. None are perfect. Nothing works. But
it's
but
made
capitalism
to be that way.
Is the least worst. That's how I
type shit. Like that's how they put it. Like yeah. I
Again,
mean,
that's
I understand.
how it's intended to start out.
Right.
But now, dealing with a country like us who's in late-stage capitalism,
right,
that's where you're running into all the issues that we're facing now.
Where basically the companies are a government themselves.
They are the government.
Yeah, yeah, not even the.
They're the government.
Because our government, you see these like congressional hearings now where they're aloof at like how to even go about questioning these like CEOs and stuff. Like they just kind of don't understand anything about the shit, or at least that's how they come across. And it's interesting. Like the companies are so leg up on the government that what is the government to do about it? Anything? Nothing? I don't know.
And then at this
Nothing,
point, like,
probably.
and that's what precedent set in like Citizens United helps lock into place. You see what I'm saying? So like somewhere along the way, politicians are getting paid out for leaning one way or another based off of that influence.
Yeah.
And then they had that dangled in front of them, like, oh, you might get this taken away.
Yeah.
Well, what's someone with power gonna do? They're gonna use that power to not lose their fucking power. That's what happens.
See, and that's why I feel like something like socialist society would inevitably, because you're giving more power to these higher ups. And sure, you could say we still vote for it, but even since 2016, we're not sure about these votes. Some of them are kind of fucky because it's like one person councilman has to whatever the fuck, how all that works. I don't have a full understanding, so I'm not going to pretend to. But what's to stop somebody then from seeking power in that system? I think personally it's better if we defederalize the government, give that the federal government less power and give it more to the people to make choices, because you then can vote with your dollar. If I don't support this company, I'm not going to buy their product. Sure, it don't make much for just me as an individual to not buy shit from them, but if everybody eventually agrees, hey, what they're doing is fucked, stop paying for their stuff.
But going back to the whole point of almost every company is ran by like 4 or 5 major companies. That's so complicated to do nowadays. You know what I mean? Like,
That's what I'm saying, where it's like an illusion, bro.
it's all an illusion.
It's an illusion. It's like it naturally, like, it can be freedom, bro. Free market freedom, but it's naturally going to build up into that oppressive order. That's just how it goes. Like, limited government, like a libertarian is, I heard this before, like you're 6 months away from being an anarchist, and that is the truth, I think. Like, you can't believe in a limited amount of like government. It's like either they get the control or they don't. Like, I don't know how you could be in the middle. Like, it's gonna naturally, and I know we're talking about private companies, but like we say, they're like an entity, like a government is an entity. It's natural to seek power, seek more order and control, and the bigger you get, and I don't know how to prevent that cycle from happening if that's the natural order of things.
So
Like, it's crazy.
One of the precedents that was upheld until Citizens United overturned it was the Glass-Steagall Act, and that
sounds cool.
and that was an act that, again, without reading it right to you, was limiting the types of, power that one could possess based off of financial means.
Like individually or company?
Both.
Which is, okay, essentially the same thing, so I guess.
And, with Citizens United going the way that it did, again, and giving companies the right to act as a sole entity and just plunge money into a system, that's where, again, you're finding yourself in the situation of, as a country, ourselves, where, again,
weird.
who's really controlling the government.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear what you're saying, definitely, about, well, if you give them control, could they take that and run with it? Well, yeah.
That's what they
but
do.
But that's where the democratic socialism comes in. The democratic part of the socialism comes into play, where we should be upholding our politicians to be doing what we want them to do.
Well, is that not already what our system is made to be, and they run rampant with it? So giving
because
them
of
more
things like Citizen United, where they are allowed, private companies are allowed to push in money to extreme amounts that are more than even a million common Joes could.
See, it's weird because, like, the government, aka like the socialist entity or whatever, the face to socialism, allowed or enacted, passed that shit seemingly in favor of the free market, but it works against the free market because you're just giving more control to the big companies and shit. Like, I don't know. It's interesting because you can't really point your finger at either of them, or you have to point your finger at both of them. Like, I don't know. That's a crazy. I'm just analyzing the situation.
When I like
bro.
the point that you made, Zach, where you said, like, there really is no almost middle ground. It's either you as a people need to create a government in which you trust and hold them accountable for that system that you're putting in place.
Yeah.
Or there's no system at all.
Yeah.
Which is
or you
anarchy.
can have chaos. Yeah.
Which is where I feel like giving the states more autonomy, the federal government fucking gets their hands out of everything, leave it more up to the states, the districts in said states, because then it's more of, hey, in this community, we need these kind of things enacted. And then it'll be a little more jarring to go to different states because laws will be a bit different. But
let's go drastic with it. Let's go
San Francisco. No.
Let's go disgusting with it.
Oh, shit.
They do that. You give states more autonomous power, right? Alabama says 10 years old is old enough.
See, that's where the federal government still has some say. You can't fucking murder people. There's still federal age of consent, obviously, because we can all agree that that's fucked. There's a few things like that, but, you know, different fucking policies about whatever the hell else they're getting involved in, which is why I think Roe v. Wade being overturned is a good thing, because things like that, I feel, are overstepping the federal government's power, and now it's up to the states once again.
You look at it as a correction, a little bit.
Because now, you know, in Texas, where they think it's bad, it can be legal or whatever the hell, or other red states and in blue states.
Yeah, it's not a blanket over everybody.
Yeah, but it gives the states more autonomy to make their own decision instead of telling.
I mean, my
what's
partner
right or wrong.
lives in Texas, so that example kind of like rings home with me. Like,
yeah,
it's even more difficult for her. Like, you can't back people into a corner by geographic location. Proximity.
No. Like borders are useful, but they're bullshit at the same time.
Because, like,
they're useful, but they're not real.
Even like contraception, all these things that people should have more access to, all of a sudden they don't, based off of their geographic location. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Well, because what'll happen is, as the states get more power, it will garner a more congruent sense of community and culture within said states.
Like, if it's not accepted here, then those type of people won't essentially be there as much.
Yeah, and people who are, then they'll end up migrating there, raising their children there. At the first, as it first gets enacted, there will be, as you said, but as time goes on, people will migrate to where their views align with that culture,
and
there will be a better sense of culture. Because that's one thing. I've been watching a lot of videos about, you know, geography and how different borders and different shit has changed throughout history. And one thing I've come to realize is, as the United States, we don't really have like a culture as a country as a whole. We are, you know, a melting pot, obviously, is kind of what we were founded upon. But I feel as if giving more autonomy to states would allow cultures to, you know, be nurtured and grow there.
But again, though, and, you know, this is kind of where things get so heavily opinionated. But some of it, in my eyes, and in a lot of, you know, in the eyes of just many humans, some things are just fucked up. Like I said, like, what do you do then if, like I said, like a southern state says, like, 10 years old is old enough? Well,
yeah, that's what I said. The federal government steps into that. You can't kill people.
Where do you draw
can't
the
do that
line?
Shit.
Like,
but exactly. So then, where's the line? You know. So that's kind of where, like, if we're gonna fucking do this, meaning this meaning have a fucking United States of America, there needs to be, you know, we need to be united then, and you can't pick and choose parts of the country where some shit's kosher and some shit's
20
not.
states pick this and the other 30 pick that.
Like, it wouldn't work like that. So when it comes...
Well, that leads to civil war and shit, like, essentially.
How did that turn out?
Well, that's if we're so dictated by
our views
of federal government. But if you look at something like... Okay, I'm not super familiar with every part of it, but the EU, for instance, it's an amalgamate of countries. And some of those countries differ very much, but they're still in a union with one another.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of how I feel as if the United States should be, is where we have a lot more autonomy, but there's still a centralizing union, which is the federal government, to say, hey, this is fucked, and obviously to manage our military. Where that line I feel like should be drawn is when you encroach, like, you can't do anything that encroaches on somebody else's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I can't, that's why something like murder that encroaches on that person's fucking right to pursue those things because you're literally ending their life. If you're talking about sex with minors, that's encroaching on, well, they're young, they're naive, you're manipulating them in a sense and using and enforcing power over them.
Yeah.
That's a violation of a human right.
Right.
That's where it should be federal. Everything else, I think, should be up to the states.
But a lot of people would say
Or
that
even the districts.
telling women what they can and cannot do with their bodies is...
See, that's the primary argument, though, of, right versus left of, in the right size, it's not the woman's body. It's a separate entity inside of the woman.
Right.
That's where that argument comes, and that's why that's one of the more... Until
But,
science progresses
okay.
further, we won't have a
Bro,
definite answer
you
one
can
way or
still
the other.
hold your position on the left and agree with that right position that you just said. Like, because that's my view. Like, I agree that it's the woman's decision, but I still agree that it's a life in there, or at the very least a potential to life. So, like, if she wants to murder it, it's her choice. I can't stop it. Some dude in a suit can't stop it. That's her fucking choice.
See, but then, that's right. Well, what's to stop my mom from just murdering me now at fucking
hopefully
my
her love for you.
Yeah, but does she then
Same
have
thing
that
from
right to
stopping that
do
woman
such?
from doing that.
Or
Yes,
if-
she has the right. She has the autonomy, like
Look-
to be able to pick up a knife or a gun or whatever, the same way you do.
But
to
not
anybody.
that's not a human right, though, to say like you can just take somebody else's life just because you have the ability to do such.
It's a human right to have your freedom, which also includes the ability to do that, which hopefully you would never do with your freedom.
But that's the thing. You have the right to freedom and make your own choices. But if you make choices that,
Go
destroy
against
that
that
freedom
freedom?
for another person,
Yeah.
that's where it's a problem.
I agree, but like if she does that, the mother, then that's her like judgment to face. Like whether she does or doesn't, like whether it's in this life or whatever's after, I don't know. But that's her judgment to face. Like I'm not saying we should have a clinic like we have McDonald's on every fucking other block, but to abort children, but I'm just saying that like I think there should be access to that like as an option. I just would hope that women would make the right decision. That's all.
Like, and then, it starts coming down into all the other things that, as an example, like that, there's a magnitude of different slew of issues, like, for example, you start in encroaching on other people's, like the adults' lives when you start dealing with what they can and cannot do with their own being, right? Like,
Yeah.
like for example, like you get an abortion, you get an abortion, and all of a sudden you're facing like life in jail.
Mm-hmm.
If you give states the autonomy to be able to set up policies and systems like that, what the fuck are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, so you're telling me one state over, I have the right to do this.
And like I can
But if I'm
take
in
care
this-
of it and shit.
But
yeah.
in this state, if I do it, I'm facing life in prison
and I'm
in that
fucked.
state.
Yeah.
Like, so yes, I do. Again, I hear what you say. Where that is like the core. One of the core debates of that issue is, well, when does the life actually start? Like, what have you? But the things that would be seemingly enacted to try to force that system on those people, and ultimately would end up harming a lot of
The
fucking
people would still vote for those systems in their respective states, or if you want to break it down even further, the counties. You'll vote for those fucking laws and what have you. And obviously that means the people need to agree on these laws. And if the vast majority agree in one sense...
Yeah, because you're saying that if we just put an abortion clinic up in every fucking state, even the states that would vote against it, then that would be kind of fucked up.
Yeah, because that
Like-
goes against what they believe.
Yeah.
It's like, You know, giving them more autonomy will, as I said, nurture more culture, and they'll have a bigger sense of community because they'll be around like-minded people, which I think is beneficial overall to just, interacting with your community.
It's a weird thing. It's like about what
because we're all so.
Yeah.
But you're starting to think about what common denominator is with an ideology like that. Oftentimes, in this particular case, religion. So that becomes like, again, a whole different variable, a whole messy, huge variable in the situation. Is because, again, like, we live in the land of the free. You can choose to believe in whatever it is that you want to believe in.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start talking about that, the only way that you would get a community to vote 100% in one direction or another, in terms of something like that, is it would probably be a very religious fucking sanctuary of a fucking community, which that kind of, again, just would go against that greater belief that you can believe in whatever it is that you want to believe in this country.
Yes, you can, but as happens, people will naturally migrate to, what is it, Utah or whatever. That's where all the Mormons are or whatever.
It's like the whole Israel issue right now in the Middle East.
Explain.
Well, look at it. I mean, they're fighting over Holy Land.
Yeah.
And I know very little about this, so
Me
I don't
too,
want to
bro.
come
That's fine.
across as, like, I know very little about this issue. But, like,
I know.
that can be seen in kind of the same way. They're fighting over a fucking Holy Land. They don't believe that fucking...
Yeah.
The Palestinians believe that fucking...
They were there first and shit?
The Jews shouldn't be there. Jews
The Jews are there
the
first,
same.
pretty sure, but...
You know what I mean? Like, it goes both fucking ways, and now they're legitimately killing one another.
But see, that's why we're not going to be individual countries. Wisconsin's not going to be a country. Fucking Illinois is not going to be a different country. We're still the United States, whereas we have autonomy, but when things like that happen, territorial disputes and the likes, that's where the federal government's like, yo, this is fucked. You can't mandate by law that, everybody in Wisconsin's now got to be Orthodox Christian or Orthodox Catholic or else death penalty. That's where the government steps in and is like, no, fuck that shit. But
to create a system in which that you're kind of thinking or kind of like, imagining here, it would almost have to be like that. Because again, like they're,
have to be like what?
It would have to be like that clear cut and fucking brutal in some situations. Brutal in the sense of, to one group of people to another. Because, I mean, this country has millions upon millions upon millions of people in it. Like, again, if you're talking a little roundhouse fucking community hall that, everyone in the town is going to once a month or whatever and making these decisions and hashing it out, that's different, but that's just not the situation at hand here in the United States of America. Like, that's why, no matter what type of government that we have, it would have to be a sort of system where there are representatives, like, where people from these areas are choosing representatives to go then and vouch for, a greater mass of people's beliefs and ideology. And that's why it would get so fucking messy in that sense, where if you start giving, individual states that type of autonomy, is because no matter what, like, again, you're locking down geographical zones at that point. And that's just not, I don't think that that's morally right. Like, if we are a country and we call ourselves the United States of America, we should be able to feel free and safe enough to, operate within our country's borders without, like I said, having to fucking, a way less brutal issue. Same vibe. Marijuana in this country. You know what I mean? Like, one state I can buy weed, the next state I can't buy weed.
Yeah.
And I can go to fucking jail for it.
And like,
which then could cause further complications on my career, like all this shit. Like,
see, I think the whole drug issue is a violation of a human right. Because honestly, you have the right to do whatever the fuck you want
Like a bird
while
baby.
it pertains to yourself.
I think all drugs
That's
should be legal.
where I disagree with you, because it's a separate entity, or at least the argument could be made. It's like, I have the right to own a firearm, but if I choose to use that firearm to fucking kill somebody else, then it's a problem.
Bro, you do have the right to kill other people, but it doesn't make it right. Like,
It's not a right, though. You do not have the right. You have the ability to do such evil. You don't have the right to do it.
yeah, I guess. Like, it's just weird how you
I kinda
think
get
about
both,
shit.
I kind of get both sides of that because, like, I think you're getting caught up on the word right.
Yeah,
and
yeah, like,
Yeah,
it's-
me and him
it-
argue semantics on every
in a
fucking
it's
episode.
hard,
slightly
bro.
different way, but kind of with how Zach's going.
'Cause I'm
like,
thinking about
you
ability.
could call it a right, but he means kind of ability.
But you're
like-
saying, like, intent or whatever. Like, right, like,
Like,
would
rights
you kill
afforded-
somebody? Like, you have the right, like, bro, why do you have a firearm? Because in case somebody tries to kill you,
I have
you
the right to
kill somebody.
self-preservation.
Right, which
That's the
involves,
difference.
which as a consequence could mean you kill somebody, like, to preserve yourself. So, like,
But that's
I
the
don't
thing
know.
of when you encroach on. That's why you get punished for certain crimes. It's
but I
because
think they will
when
get
you
punished. The woman, it just might not be in this life. Like, she'll have to face that, like, in her spirit, bro. Like, that she did that shit. But I think, like you explained originally in your first one, that they do feel it, and they do feel devastated and terrible and broken and all these different things from that. So it's like,
And I made the point that even if they don't, it's not anyone else's fucking say on the matter.
yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm getting into the whole point of things like you have to look at the common denominator at that point. Well, what are one of the main, variables of why people
And
feel a certain type of
I
way?
agree
That
with the
could be
religion thing. Yeah, and I'm
know?
not like no
So-
devout Christian or nothing, but I'm spiritual enough to, like, the way I understand shit, that is a life in there. That's how I understand shit. If she don't think that way about it, okay. Like, we can't make her.
so
She has to come to the realization or not.
said representatives and other officials should not be able to dictate policies based off of religious beliefs of their own. But if the voting populace decides to vote for this, they can have whatever reasons they want, be it because of their faith or not.
It's not disclosed. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. If the people are broadly Christian, yeah, some of the policies will reflect that, sure. If they're Mormon, it'll reflect that. If they're Islamic or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but if an elected official comes and is like, well, the Bible says this, so we're enacting this policy. That's where the federal government steps in, is like, yo, no, shut the fuck up. You're out of power. You guys are voting somebody else in.
But that happens, though. And again,
Yeah.
I believe I mentioned this last time. Like, one of my research courses in my higher education for my minor was the Supreme Court. Reagan was like 80s. So, like, 50 years ago, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, the Supreme Court was supposed to be completely unbiased to either side, whatever side. Now, you can literally look at the Supreme Court and they kind of like, oh, they're a blue judge. Oh,
Yeah.
they're a
Oh,
red
it's
judge.
really like that.
Like,
yeah.
it's not supposed to be like that. It should not be
So
the
clear
two
cut,
sides
yeah.
clear cut
Yeah.
arguing in the system that fucking makes precedent in which we base
But
laws off
what
of.
if you naturally always have to fall under
Yeah,
one
you
of
naturally
those?
will
Well,
have some sort of predisposition, but you need to try to
that's what
separate
I'm
it.
saying is, like, no matter what, that is just the nature of the situation.
Yeah, it's like I was saying
So,
earlier. It
it-
naturally.
So then how does giving these people more power stop that from happening? That's why I feel like, again, the state's autonomy, because it's a lot easier to hold accountable, Joe from down the block or whatever you have, compared to some fucking congressman I don't even fucking know who our congressman here is. Yeah, it's not part of my everyday life. Have representatives for each, fucking city or county that the people vote on. get to know,
But that's
and then they can
where-
have more of that
But
grassroots
that's where
interaction.
education comes into play. You see what I'm saying? Like, I say this all the time about a progressive way of thought. And, democratic socialism is like there are so many pieces that you need to kind of all have a scope on all at once for it to make any sort of sense.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, like, things aren't going to change overnight. Like, again, I believe that in a country as big as the United States and that has as many people as the United States, we, no matter what system that we enact, are going to need a system that has representatives. Like, it's just, especially nowadays with capitalism, like, if you're trying to keep any sort of free market in the system, people are so caught up in that fucking market, that free market type of system, that they're doing things, trying to, excel their business, trying to excel their personal endeavors, and no one has time to go to a fucking town hall once a fucking week.
So that's another
education is one of the biggest things with all of this, where, like you said, like you just said, you don't even know your representatives. It's fucked up.
I agree, and I feel like if you give the states more autonomy, then there's more incentive for them to be campaigning and to be interacting with people, in their state, because they're going to be there more than in fucking DC. And then another thing too with people not going to town hall and all that shit. He's currently running for president. Vivek Ramaswamy, I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah, that dude.
Is talked about like how
His
election
ass gonna
day.
Get shot, bro.
What up?
His ass gonna get shot talking all that shit up there, bro.
Well, he's talked about too.
He's dope, but
Yeah,
talking
having
that shit.
election day as a national holiday, where you get off and all that kind of shit. And I think
There's no doubt that should be the case.
yeah, exactly. And I think there should be incentives to, fucking town. This is town hall day where everybody goes down and we voice our opinions on shit, and everyone gets a paid day off of work, whatever, nationally enforced, call some shit like that. So again, enforcing that sense of community, and that will eventually garner it.
There shouldn't even be.
And you don't have to
even
go, but
one
like
day, like a lot of people in this country don't even vote in like the general main election.
yeah, I know.
Like, and again, dude, no matter what system that you put into place, there's gonna be someone that tries to tamper with it and use it in, not the way that it was intended to be. Like, for example, I don't even know if you guys know this, but like the local elections, the local municipality elections are, if you're talking about a sense of community, are the most important fucking election in your direct community. Who the fuck votes at those? Barely anybody. Barely anybody. But if you go on to your fucking voting.gov site, you know what I mean, you can request, if your state allows it, absentee ballots sent to your house throughout the whole year. You have to do it once a year, and I do every single January. That's how I vote, is because I don't have a lot of time to fucking participate in all of these elections myself. So every January I'll go to that site, request that all fucking ballots be sent directly to me via mail, and I get to still participate in my civil duty that we are so gracious to have here in this country. Like, there will be times that I get a fucking ballot in the mail. I didn't even know there was a fucking election going on. I had no idea.
Yeah, I'll hear like day of, like, oh, there's an election going on today. It's like, oh, that ass? Well, I have no fucking time. Today's already all...
Right, and with an absentee ballot, they send that shit to you a couple weeks beforehand, and they give you a prepaid envelope back that says, hey, send this back by this date for your vote to count. And, obviously there's checks and balances with that, as much as there can be in a system like that, where, like, right now in the state of Wisconsin, like, I'll vote, but I need someone to then witness my vote. Like, not see what I voted for, but actually witness that I am the person that I say that I am, writing out and filling in this ballot to then send out, and then they sign as a witness on that same ballot and send it off back into the mail.
Damn.
And I, being so involved in politics during my higher education, I still to this day recommend that for literally everybody in this country, if your state allows you to do so, because then you don't have to, keep up with it as much in the fucking crazy chaos that so many Americans call their lives. And you still have that opportunity for your voice to be heard. And, whether or not, again, it actually counts, that's a whole different debate. But I would like to think that it does.
See, like,
to an extent.
That's where, you could have certain holidays, or you get different benefits if you attend, debates for your local shit. And as the federal government has less say over everything, because that's another thing I feel like would be beneficial to giving the states more autonomy, is the federal government isn't stretched so thin trying to dictate every fucking thing, where they can, focus in on what they're supposed to be doing, making sure, human rights aren't violated, that sort of thing. And then we could, again, obviously, I know things aren't perfect. It'll never work out ideally exactly how you fucking picture it. But I think from what I know, which I'm sure you, as you said, you got higher education. I don't. I'm self-taught with most things. But I think giving more power to the states in turn gives more power to the people, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the overall goal of socialism. Well, unless you ask Vladimir Lenin, but what, ain't nobody asking this fuck ass.
But again, what people, though? And then that's where the geographic issue comes into play. Is like,
again, and that would certainly be a big issue, as these growing pains is what that would be. But over time, people would naturally migrate to communities where their views align with, giving you more sense of a community. Whereas now it's like, I don't know my fucking neighbors like that. Like, most people don't. Even if you live in, like fucking where I live, it's not a big city by any means, but I don't know my fucking neighbors. Most people don't associate with everybody else because they got so much shit going on. I feel like it would help nurture that in time. Or at the very least,
if you even want to, though.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a lot easier to associate with people when your views at least somewhat align, and you have that sense of common ground. That was one of the biggest benefits.
Cults are formed.
Yeah, because I feel like, as I said, like, we don't really have a culture, crazily.
But that's how cults are formed, though. You're talking about like echo chambering and shit. Like, that would be a real life, like, echo chamber, like, not just
not entirely,
the websites
because
that you visit and frequent and the places that you hang out in, the
yeah, it's like
world, like
an exclusivity club, like, so a cult, same thing, a religion.
So some places I'm sure would foster such things, but just it's like you're not going to agree on everything, but you have a basis of which to know, okay, we align at least in some of these things, and there can be discourse
it's like,
more fine-tuned.
I think if you dig deep enough, you'll find that most people agree on a lot and
exactly.
Disagree on just a few minor things that could be enough to create distaste for that person, I suppose, depending on the individual. But I think that's like bullshit to dismiss or discredit somebody because of a simple divergence in views, but I guess that's a lot of how people operate or whatever. It's how they express themselves. And you have different views, I don't like you.
The system could still be an issue, whereas, as you said, that makes people feel too ostracized, and thus populations start to spread themselves thinner. Industry starts to become more uh, decentralized and the economy suffers in turn. That's a very possible downside to it. And I'm not dismissing that at all.
Right.
But I think something needs to be done with the current system, and I don't think giving the federal government more power is the call, even if we vote on it, because that's kind of already how it's supposed to be and doesn't feel so much.
And
That's
again,
why a lot of people
how
don't
it's
vote.
supposed to feel. But again, when you put down precedent that is saying, well, hey, corporations can influence and dump money into our political system, again, the playing field is not level.
So we agree that I got to look more into this case. That should be overturned. Okay, if it's as you say it is, which I don't doubt it's very different than how you're describing it, that shit, get rid of that. But then what still does socialism provide in your eyes? That
Well, like I said, over the basic needs, the accessibility to basic needs, like I said,
The free
an
market
education, like I said, a democratic socialist system is not going to wipe a free market. It's going to level the playing field.
So it sounds like you don't want to enact democratic socialism, but what you want is more of a social safety net, such as I believe like Denmark and should have.
I just think that people are not. They're not taken care of the way that we could be taken care of, and I feel like a lot of people can agree with this in this country that companies are more taken care of compared to like the average citizen.
Sure, but I don't think that the average citizen should be taken care of. I think that it's, that's one of the beautiful things about America is you have the right to go and take care of yourself, but you got to want that right, or you got to want it and go get it.
taken
But you
care of
can
is
get
like
it.
equivalent to being granted like ample opportunity to create something for yourself and take care of yourself.
Well, in that sense, then I'd
Essentially.
say that's how it's supposed to be here. Of
Yeah.
Like-
and is that how it is now, or is it like there isn't enough opportunity right now and chance to get through that filter and like become a 100K plus a year earner and shit like that?
I think as long as you have the determination, you can do anything.
I like that belief too. Like I subscribe to that. I believe I believe essentially. It's like it's hard to say that you know that unless you've specifically seen it, and all you can use is yourself. Like you know how, or I guess the people around you too. Like how low have they been? How low have you been? And how have you bounced back from that and shit? Like have you actually climbed out of whatever hole you were in and shit like that? Like because I don't know, I agree, it seems like the disenfranchisement of the common individual is like high, but I think there's so many factors to why that could be besides just like there isn't opportunity, because I think there is opportunity. I just think people aren't necessarily looking for it. They don't understand it. They don't.
And also, it's hard.
It's
difficult, and I
hard.
feel like, regardless,
Takes that.
be it now because of
drive.
late stage capitalism, be it any other factors at play, there will always be challenges, and those challenges will get more and more difficult as time
Like shit.
progresses.
Even
it's just making
and-
a more sound population as a whole, because like I said, a lot of people won't even have kids because
I can't afford that. Like
we can't afford it.
yeah.
Like I have so many even the way that we grew up, your mom and your father worked. That's just how it was. Same with mine. And people are raising other people's kids in systems that are not funded, in my opinion, as they should be. So, I even saw it through elementary school. I had smaller classes starting out, and then as I went through my like K-12 education, like you would hit a class every now and again where it's just like 40 fucking people in one, but like one
Right.
person cannot, one professor or teacher cannot properly or effectively make sure that 40 to 50 different learning styles are all being accommodated at the same time. So it's just like that's like such a minute example of that. But
See, in America, I got the right to, I don't want to send my kid to public school, and it's difficult to do this shit, so I'm going to move somewhere where I can kind of live more off the land, so I don't need money to support myself as much, and then I also, in turn, have more time to teach my kids, and I can teach them lessons like how to tend to the fucking
what are you
land.
doing though? And that's the point that I'm trying to make is like what, like gone are the days that like. And the point that I'm trying to make is like one of the things that I feel like people are not taken care of regarding is like child care, for example. Like, okay, if you're gonna make a system where both parents are obligated to work to even sustain a livable life in any sort of non-tragic means, how are you, like, who is raising this new human being? Like, who's raising the children? Oftentimes other people that are not the parents. So it just gets into this battle of, okay, well, what do we do about that then? Well,
As a parent, you say, hey, I want to be with my kid's life more. You figure out your plan of attack. It's going to be difficult. And you go and you get it done. As a guy, maybe that means working more hours that you don't want to fucking work. It sucks ass. But then, hey, your wife can be there for the kid. That's the burden you have to bear. But you have the opportunity to do something about it yourself instead of just, I need my problems taken care of.
A lot of people who have children who feel like that end up doing is because, like, again, like I have plenty of real life examples where like it just makes more sense financially for one parent to completely just not work, and that that extra weight is put on that other's shoulders.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't necessarily be the case. Again, like, how can we fix this? Okay, well, the federal government can mandate companies that are making all this fucking money to have fucking maternity leave, and not just like some companies. A lot of companies don't have any type of leave at all.
Right.
But like the companies that do, some are even like, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but tops though. Like, the fuck are you doing 1 month with a newborn? You know what I mean? Like,
Find a babysitter.
you know what I mean? Like, it should be
Whatever.
an extended amount of time. And not only should it just be maternity leave, but companies should also buy.
See, that's infringing on somebody else's autonomy. It's not the CEO's business to take care of your rights. It's you're taking their money so that you have your fucking wants, but you can, if you actually want it, you can go and get shit done. You can be that change. Life's not easy. It's literally one of the first it's one of the 3 primary rules of Buddhism. Life is suffering. It sucks ass. You gotta tough it out, but I mean, as a guy, that's honestly a thing that drives me in wanting to like start a company, to do this podcast and hopefully see it take off. Is I want to be able to provide, even if that means I'm working 24/7. And with how America is today and the opportunities we have, I'm able to pursue that in any way that I see fit. And I think that's a beautiful thing about this country, and to think that if I start a business, now I got to start paying for other people to raise their kids, but I went out and got it, and I got shit going to be able to support myself. You could do that too.
For the time off, though. I mean, like, the reason why people are not loyal to companies nowadays like they used to be in previous generations is because they're not fucking loyal to us. And that's part of the issue. Like,
because you got to pay taxes
You know,
so
take-
much on every dollar.
Like
that
take my
companies don't have
own
shit.
company, for example. Like, I got in right after they no longer have a pension plan. I have now a matched 401k. So you're telling me that if I work for this company for 20 years, 25 plus years, what happens? What do I get for putting my time and my dedication and my loyalty into the company? I personally believe that pensions are a fucking great thing, and they are well deserved for people that work for them.
So then find a different employer who offers such benefits to you.
Few and far between now, bud.
Well, them's the breaks. Make your own company that offers that if you feel that that's so necessary. That's the way I view it.
But you
Not everything's a
it's
give
like
you
you're
shit.
going in circles, but
Right.
like,
Yeah.
well, I don't have the means to like
to do that.
that.
Exactly. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, and that's where I kind of get caught up on
Look.
a lot of your points, Trev. It's just like you say it with such like nonchalance. You know what I mean? Like it's like
I agree with what you say though too, because it's like there
if you
is
have
truth
motivation,
to
it's-
it. It's just
It's like, oh, it fucking sucks. I don't have the means. Well, hey, if I work a few extra hours for a few weeks, I can put some of this money aside, and then I can
Yeah.
put it into this, get some capital
you might-
brewing slowly.
you
but
might
it'll
only be able to build or get to a certain point on the board, you know, and then whoever your offspring or whoever is gonna have to pick up where you left off, and maybe it's a partner or somebody, you know what I'm saying, and then they take it as far as they can go before they have to retire or die.
But it's
and shit
another
like
nice
that.
thing is you can work with people,
That's what
so
I'm
it's
saying.
not all
yeah.
you.
But
But
to-
if you
to be
want it
that
bad enough,
spark,
you can get it.
like to be that spark that really gets shit going, like that's the like that might be the difference, I guess, is like if you can really have that, you know, tenacity or whatever about you that gets shit done, you know. I don't know. It's just like I feel a lot of people don't have that, and I don't know what turns it on, what empowers that individual, how they realize that if they can go and get it.
But if
an
you're
education.
An
not,
education,
if you're not gonna
yeah.
put that work into
Some-
go and get it, then you don't deserve the benefits of all that labor.
So the person at the company that wants to leave, should they be educated enough to understand that they should have looked for a job that incorporated that?
Like you can't choose
before
where you come from, but you can choose where you go from there.
type shit.
You
So-
can't decide where you're going to be born, what kind of education is going to be available to you, but you can decide to pursue
Well, where you're at
those
now.
means.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, and
and to pursue further. And
like
get what
it's
you
almost
want.
like I don't know. I don't want to say where you're coming from, but like it's like you can always think of a better, more ideal circumstance of whatever the fuck the thing is. Maybe like, you know what I'm saying? Like you can always think of a more ideal circumstance, but
In practice, half the time it's not the case.
you just it's just that it's not the case, and it's that like the things that it takes to get to that ideal might be difficult to obtain, and I don't know, like I'm not saying you're idealistic, I'm saying like
We're all idealistic.
like
Yeah,
as
in some
much as
manner.
the next individual, it's just like I think this shit in the same way of like, well, shouldn't it have this, or shouldn't that be in place there, or shouldn't that logically be that way or whatever, but isn't there obviously a reason why that isn't there or whatever, but then it's about deciding if that's a good reason or if it's a bad reason and shit, and and
And when
That's
you
tough,
look at
bro.
situations like, okay, so
Money.
you're telling me
that's
this is
the
what I
main
was about to
reason.
say, fucking money. So you're gonna tell me that, you know, no, you don't believe as, you know, my company, you don't believe that you should, you know, pay for a good amount of extended time off when I need it to be able to, like, for example, take some time off to, like, raise a kid. Okay, you don't have the means to do that, but what are you making in a year for
Right.
salary? Oh, how many million?
Right.
and I brought home $45,000
Right.
only.
But if you
this
If
year.
you
put
took the
in
deal,
if you
took the
put in
deal.
the groundwork to build a fucking company, don't you think you deserve the fruits of
No.
said labor?
No.
What?
No, because
Why not?
Because once you get to a certain point in late stage capitalism, if your company can make it that far, you are then reaping the benefits of other people's labor.
Very true.
Not your own.
But it's because you willingly got.
But because
you got them to willingly accept that.
Well,
Accept the terms in which you laid
that's-
out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
that's one of the benefits if you look at it, because you put in all that groundwork to establish the systems at play to the point that, wow, I did all this
What if
work and all this
Daddy-
bullshit.
What if Daddy gave you a small loan of $1 million?
And we don't need to talk about, obviously there's going to be some specific cases where
a lot of
people get
cases.
unfair advantage, but again,
a
you
lot
can't
of
choose where you come from, but you can choose where you go from there. Okay? Some
lot
people
of
are born of
cases.
wealth, some people are born of poverty. That doesn't matter. You can go and get it. You have the right to the pursuit of happiness, not to happiness. If you want it, you can get it. It's going to be difficult as fuck.
Depends on how you define happiness.
I guess so.
People, that definition is so different amongst many people, happiness.
And that's why you
For
don't
some
have the right to
people is-
happiness. And I feel like that's the problem with such things as communism and, as I've heard described, socialism. I'm not positive with your exact definition with it. But you can't... Happiness means something else to everybody. But we all have the right to... I can pursue what I believe happiness is. You can pursue what you believe happiness is. You know what I'm saying?
Well, only to an extent, though.
How long to an extent?
Because what if I think happiness is cutting people's heads off?
The
Can't
dude
do
always
that.
had to go to the dark.
It's true, though.
but that's
It's
vi-
These are
true.
the
as
things
long
that
as
you
you're not
have to
violating somebody else's
explore,
human
though.
rights.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're right. Like within reason, basically.
Within
reason. Like-
you not...
But I think that a human right should be healthcare. I think that a human right
Mm-hmm.
should be access to education. I think that a human right should be, a multitude of things that other people do not deem as a human right. More so in your corner where it's just like, well, if you want it, you can go get it. Well, that's not necessarily what I believe and a lot of people believe. And when it comes down to the actual...
Well, it's like you do believe it, like that there's a way to go get it, but I think you might be of the view that it's like just too
It's an access issue.
Yeah, it's unrealistic. It's hard. It's too difficult. There's too much of a barrier.
So something...
It's
like
a growing
system
opportunity.
Like democratic socialism, what something like that does, a system like that does, is, like I said, it's leveling the playing field. It's giving opportunities to people to pursue that happiness in ways that are very, very valid when in the terms of making fucking money. You can still, as a company, make money. Like, again, why... I don't understand why so many people who have similar views to you, Trev, that why it falls on the sole core of the individual to fucking make something out of nothing when
It's like
Like I
that's all
said-
you can count on.
Yeah, because
Like-
you can't depend on other people, and if you owe everything to somebody else, then you're essentially in debt to them. if you
Relying
will.
on them.
Yeah, and then you
Again,
have
having
no
so much
abilities.
money, like Jeff Bezos, for example, or any billionaire. Billionaires should not exist.
They have an idea, they put in the effort to grow said thing, and then sure, they get to a certain point where this thing can be managed subordinately, but there's still obviously things they have to do to make sure company image is good, to make sure that it's still being run how it's supposed to be.
But I just
There's a
don't
lot
agree with
more that goes into shit.
Bro, just in this conversation alone,
And bro made so much money.
The course, that's what I'm saying. Just in the course of this conversation that we've had, there's people that have made thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Thousands.
And they put in the work, had a good idea that they were able to monetize in such a way.
But
And-
you're kind of saying there shouldn't be so much like disparaged individuals. Basically, like being created, pumped out, into society while these thousands of dollars are being put into their
Right to
account.
the
Like,
top. Exactly.
it's literally like
Anyone
Well, think about it. If
who-
not for billionaires,
happening. I get it.
who's employing yacht builders? They don't need to build
know.
yachts, bro. Like, it's
Yeah.
still trickle down economics. Sure, might not have been how it was idealized, but it still is a thing. There's still different economic opportunities available because of certain economic classes. There always will be a hierarchy. Hierarchies are a natural part of nature
And I'm
as a
not
whole.
disagreeing with that, but the issue that we're having now is like almost all of the money that is generated is going to the top 1%. That's like the classic figure that you hear, like the top 1%. But in reality, a majority of that money is like the top like 0.2 of that 1%. Now you're creating psychopaths. Again, there's no fucking reason why. Like, I say this wholeheartedly with the absolute truth, and I would expect you boys to hold me up to it if it ever fucking came to realization for me. If I had that much fucking money, I wouldn't have that much fucking money because I'd be doing things with it.
So it's almost
Actually
like
pumping it back into the
if you
economy,
earned that
giving
kind
the
of money,
opportunity.
you would have the right to choose to spend it however you wished, and you would choose to spend it more giving back. But if somebody else earned that money, they put in the effort, they, as a human being, have the right to choose where to spend it. And if
to hoard it.
yeah, if that's what they choose to do, that's
But
their
what does
right.
that do for the economy, though? You're talking about a lot of your...
How is that
a
them
lot of-
expressing their good as an individual by hoarding all that fucking money?
Right.
Like, they're still going to be able to hoard it, even if they're fucking taxed more. They're still going to have a shit ton of money. It doesn't really change much. They already, I don't know if you looked it up since, but the top 1% pay 40% of all taxes in the United States.
Because they fucking have to. Because they are
Well,
the
that's-
ones making the money.
Okay, so why do they need to be taxed more? They're already paying 40% of all of the taxes in the United States.
It's, again, it goes into the actual business entity viewpoint on it all. Like I said, Amazon pays almost nothing as a business in business taxes.
Because Amazon's as good as Jeff Bezos.
But think
Like,
about how
treated the same way,
I know a fair amount of people who are
but
you know,
differently.
employees of that. They make a good living off of that shit. It offers opportunities for more people to then make money as employees,
But is it
work
which
at
gives them money
Amazon.
to spend.
You worked at Amazon. You can be
Yes.
the first person to say, like, yeah, that's an opportunity and people make
But-
money off of it, but that's a shit-ass job.
Yeah. I was gonna say, but okay.
You could be getting paid
it's
more
a
for
weird,
that
it's
job.
a crazy thing because
But
this
that's
is
going to get it.
this-
It's difficult. It sucks ass sometimes. You got to slog through the fucking mud.
like Amazon is
that's-
like
Because
That's
that's
what
the
it is.
terms that they set up for it.
That's the terms of life.
what do you call it, late term capitalism? Like Amazon's like a consequence of that late term capitalism.
Wholeheartedly,
Okay.
absolutely
And,
correct.
and now it's appearing to the masses as like a solution to these disenfranchised individuals that I've been talking about by offering them jobs, by giving them cheap products that are accessible to them and whatever. Okay, cool.
Then a majority of those
But
products
how
are not even
many
made here.
how many Jeff Bezos is Amazon producing though? Like I don't, like you said, like it's a shit little job that people
It's a shit little
like-
job that
get you going.
you can slog
I
through
get both
the
of them,
mud
bro.
to build up the fucking revenue so that you can get your own shit. It's not super fucking mentally engaging. But that's a good thing because then you have more time to use your mental energy to think of concepts to go and get.
See, but this is the issue, though, and again, like, dude, so many people in our generation, because of how much that they work, like, you hear it all the time. People don't even have fucking hobbies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Too tired to do anything,
like
bro.
too tired to do anything. Like, you start getting to talking to somebody like, yo, what do you do? Nothing. What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you like? Nothing.
It's almost
That's
as
where
if
it comes into being
yeah.
determined, though.
What are you working on? Like, what do you do? What's your week look like? Yo, I work 50 hours a week at Amazon, and I have to. I have to do that.
I drive an hour back and forth home every day.
And I drive an hour back and forth. By the time I get home,
gas is eating a hole in my fucking pocket.
And that's it. I go to bed. Like,
right.
And again, I understand your point where it's like, well, you need to find the motivation within yourself to somehow figure these things out based off of what the system is giving you. But the whole point that, again, I keep trying to make is like, it's all about accessibility. It's all about giving people more opportunity that is valid. Like it can be there. Like it is there. The reasons why it is not is because of the way that the people with the power have set it up to be. Like, it's a crazy thought to me to, again, have all this power and not want... The only reason why you wouldn't want to spread that wealth back is either you are a psychopath,
you're controlled opposition type shit.
You know what I mean? Like
psychopaths will always rise to power. Look at literally history as a whole and monarchs and all that.
True.
It's gonna happen. I'd rather it be that they just have a bunch of fucking money. Who gives a shit? They're still employing people compared to them owning an army and having, people executed for disagreeing with their beliefs. I think it's a better alternative.
I guess, like, the point, and these things always are they're more easily understood when things hit home, when things can be,
because your perception of the world is only what you personally experience.
So, like, to, again, put it in the means of, I'm trying to think of a situation that I can kind of shoot it out to you to kind of get you to think of it in more of that light and see the benefits of, like, a democratic socialist system compared to, like, a capitalistic system that inevitably is going to run rampant, especially if you allow it to do so. So like Citizens United Court.
I get where you're coming from. Bless you, doggo. But the way I see it is, like, I shared similar beliefs when I was much more pessimistic in my worldview, much more nihilistic, if you will. But as I've become more optimistic, understanding that I do not get to determine the circumstances of my life, but I can determine how to act upon said circumstances thrust upon me, and become more optimistic in sense. There's still days where it's difficult, but you can do whatever the fuck it is you want to do, but you need to have that determination. As the example given earlier, I got to work 50 hours a week, and it's an hour drive there and then back. Oh, it fucking sucks. I only got, like, a little bit of time. Well, if you want it, I'm going to get less sleep tonight. Fuck, hell, when I edit these videos, I'm going to get less sleep tonight because I want to edit it so I can have this out in a good schedule.
Yeah, like, if those are your circumstances and that's too much for you, and you can't do anything more with yourself after that, then, like, I guess that's what you're destined to.
You don't want it.
But otherwise, you can sit there and hope for, like, shit to change and hope and hope and hope. But what the fuck is hoping going to do if you don't take action?
Exactly.
Like, I agree with that. Like, you do have to rise above whatever current circumstance you find yourself in, even if it's a difficult one. But I agree with you, Zach, that it's hard, or it's very uncommon for a lot of people to even have that drive or knowledge of how to put things together around them.
And like, one of the main points I was making on the first time that we all sat down together was just even the knowledge of where to start.
Yeah.
And like I said, like, nothing would be perfect, and no matter what system that you put in front of a human, another human is going to find a way to tamper with that system or possibly use and abuse it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make me believe anymore that every fucking person shouldn't have a more level playing field for that opportunity. Do you have health care?
Yeah.
How is it? Do you know anything about it? It's probably shit, isn't it?
Covers my fucking meds and I'm good.
That's like a realistic, a more, not to blatantly like accuse you of something, but that's a very selfish way to think about it. Like, my healthcare is actually very good at my company. I pay for it for sure, but you know, a lot of people are not, they don't even have like that, for example.
So I'm not opposed to social programs such as Medicaid, welfare, and food stamps for people who actually need it. Obviously, there will be people who abuse it, but I'm not completely opposed to those ideas. I think there needs to be a bit more put into it so it can't be as abused. But I don't think that those are a net negative by any means, and that those systems need to be abolished. But to be expanded upon, I think, is unnecessary because, yeah, sure, I get it. There's some people who have it bad, and they need a little help with some things, but your basic needs are taken care of, and if you actually want it, you can go get it. If you improve these systems too much, I feel like some people will result to not putting in effort to go and get shit because everything they need taken care of. Why the fuck would you work?
Your dad's retired, right?
No.
No? I don't know why I thought that he was. Who do you know that's retired?
My grandpa at like 70 now.
I
know that my girlfriend's dad, he retired, and he went back to work because he was bored being retired.
So I like that you just said that, because that outlays one of the things that, one of the points that I've been making over these two conversations so far is people want to work. People have a natural drive to work. They just don't know how.
Well, they want to have.
We'll go back to your.
They want to have purpose.
We'll go back to your grandpa here real quick. Your grandpa's retired. If you don't, I don't expect you to know this, obviously, because you're not living his life. But
yeah, like how much he.
How the fuck does this motherfucker get paid?
Yeah.
Do you know? Do you know how he gets paid?
Like
Social Security.
Social Security and a pension. That's
what I'm saying. Yeah,
and if he made right moves and made enough money, potentially investments, like maybe stocks, maybe fucking 401k investments into, different types of fucking, what's the word I'm looking for? Different instruments, We talked about it, or I talked about it just a little bit ago. My company now doesn't offer a pension plan at all. They just match me. I can put into my own 401k, and they will match me up to a certain percentage. That's 5%. I take that full 5% because that's an extra 5% that they're going to match me.
Right.
But that's it. Cool. That is significantly less than a pension system. They do that purposefully because in the long run, companies feel the exact same way. Why the fuck do I need to pay out for the loyalty that you gave my company? Well, one would argue we made you rich.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. My work,
well,
my
then
labor
if it's such a
helped make you
detrimental
rich.
thing and people feel such a way,
right? So
they will start to feel. The company will start to see that people will leave. People will bitch.
Following my point, I don't have now a pension system in my company. It's a matched 401k up to a certain percentage, and then after that, whatever I put into it, I put into it. That's my retirement. That's what I would live off of if I could not work, or if I make it old enough to when I'm done working. Social Security would be the second big source of income, the main source of income that a lot of people have, the main source. Boys, we will be fucking lucky unless major improvements are made to even see Social Security. What does that mean for us?
It means, hey, look, we're young still, we have energy, we're able to go and get, we see where the future is heading, so let's make precautions ahead of time. Let's do more so we can still live a fruitful life when we're old.
Don't get caught lacking, bro.
Yeah, don't get caught lacking.
What's the main thing that is involved with all that? Education.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's all one big circle, and there's so many. This is why I continuously say that anytime I have these conversations with anybody that is willing enough to talk to me about them, like a democratic socialist way of thinking is so deep. There's so many working points and variables to it that you can't just take one little thing and try to fucking make the house of cards fall. Because if you do that, it's so easy to do when you're looking at it in that way. Again, like, we're all going to be working till we die, unless major changes are made. Like,
But
we get no reprieve. So, and a lot of people, based off of, like I said, things like Citizens United, lobbying in the United States of America to politicians, fucking the fact that we have a fucking 5-day work week, a lot of people have more than that. Like, people are not happy. People are not feeling fulfilled. They're not happy. They don't know where to start. And they're creating kids that don't even know. I mean, how can you, again, like, create a population that understands these things if we ourselves don't even know about them and how to fucking handle it? Like, over time, I truly in my heart believe that the more that we let this late stage capitalism run rampant, the higher possibility for that anarchy we're going to see.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
People are not.
It's coming, bro.
It's a cycle, and we talked a little bit about this last time too. Like, the United States of America is like 250 years old. Like, we are the youngest, but yet one of the most powerful nations in the world, and people are not fucking happy. We don't, on a general basis, do not feel like we're being fulfilled. We don't believe in our politicians. People know that the fucking system is fucked up.
I feel
and there's
like
nothing that we can do about it. They're feeling disenfranchised.
and
So
disenchanted. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not, like, you can't just, like, give them, like, cheap little dumb shit from Amazon or IKEA anymore and just they'll be happy with it. Like, they're, like, you can't just feed them little innocent fucking lies on the news or whatever anymore.
See, and that you could see that as a pessimistic thing, or you could see that as optimistic of people are starting to wake up,
That's
realizing
what I'm
that their
saying.
circumstances are bad, and they're going
I like the
to
latter.
go and they are going to work to improve their situation
It's
instead
not a
of
work of improvement, Trevor. Do you know how they're gonna go get it?
Oh God, like
if that
revolution. Like
sometimes
that's what I think.
that is
like,
the way to improve it.
It's
of,
cyclical.
Dismantling all that is. But you also got to understand revolutions are a dangerous ass thing.
Yes.
And we don't fully understand the systems that brought us to be. So to start tearing out the bricks willy nilly, well, you're destined to make the whole building crumble. We should probably wrap this up. We've been going for fucking like 2 hours, 50 minutes. We've been going
It's been 2 hours already?
Yeah, it's been a
We've been
fucking
vibing,
minute.
bro.
We definitely got to have you back on because.
Part 3 and 4 and 5.
Yeah, right.
Fuck it.
I still am not entirely sure
my mind. It's been 2 hours
the difference between democratic socialism and communism and what exactly democratic socialism looks like. I felt like a lot of this episode was critiquing the
Knock my hat
the
off.
rightful issues with capitalism and debating possible solutions to it, but I'm still kind of in the dark in terms of what exactly democratic socialism looks like and how that's implemented, and I'd like to go over that deeper in an episode if you'll be back on at any point.
Of course. I would love to.
Or we could talk about some other shit. If you want to talk about fucking... He's always want to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm pretty sure you fucks with Yu-Gi-Oh!, right?
Random
yeah.
shit.
Yeah, you can talk
Yeah.
about Yu-Gi-Oh!
I'll ask a random question. Ready? If there's an ideal age that you could stay at for any period of time, 5 years, 10 years, one day, what age? Just what age? Like, would you go back to 20? Would you go to 18? Would you go to 50?
I mean, we're talking on a level of
Just
just
to
an
experience.
age, or
Yeah.
to am I bringing in my,
Like, is he traveling to that point in time? And
You too.
are we traveling to that point in time and experiencing what life was like at that age? Or am I just...
Yeah.
Right now, I just become 17 and
Okay, so
some shit. I don't want to be fucking 17. Fuck that. But just an example.
yeah, it would be like our timeline, like not multiverse type of deal where it's like
So I'm immortal, and this is just the age that I appear, and...
if it's, because that's kind of what I'm asking. Is it just the age that I appear? Because if it's not the age that I appear, then I would say that I feel like I am the most capable person that I've ever been right now in this moment in time.
That's a cold answer.
Yeah,
bro.
I'd
So-
agree. Why go to the past? I'm
Hell
a
yeah.
better person.
So
It
if
could
we're
be the
bringing
future
in all
too,
the experience
but-
and
I
don't know if
whatnot,
it'd be like
I would
a-
wanna
Right. Okay.
do it right now. But if we're talking just like a fucking age thing, like yeah, I would potentially like to shave a couple years off my life. You know, I
Like,
feel
did you feel better?
my
a
shit
few
be
years?
creaking and cracking more than it did when I was fucking 18. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would like to travel back to like
19,
whenever I
bro.
started this bullshit and get my posture better. But
Oh god. Okay, yeah. I just thought of that fucking whimsically. All right, bro.
thanks for
Beautiful.
tuning in to this episode. Tell us your thoughts down below on where you think capitalism is right now and any changes. Again, love to have you back on soon. But,
Thank you so much, boys. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that's been it. Like if you did. Subscribe for new episodes each week. Thursday at 6. I don't know why I always forget. See ya. Fuck, I missed.